What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to Nightmare Success In and Out Podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who served time at other prisons. We're going to be talking about life before prison, life in prison, and life out of prison. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you've built up in your own mind. Folks, today we have a real treat because I always love the fact when we have alums, Nightmare Success alums that were on the program that give me somebody to talk to that they are really high on. So Brandon Reed, who was on a few podcasts ago, and he was at the time, there was a lot of talk in the town of St. Louis about his story. He was on the in the Post-Dispatch and some other places talking about he was being turned down for places to live. So anyway, we were talking back and forth, and he said, "You've got to talk to Robert Riley II." He said, here's his contact. I was all excited. So I started reading up on Robert. And, you know, everybody who listens to this program knows I love it when somebody can take their experience that they've had and then affect positive change because of that. And, you know, Robert got out of prison in 2008. He went through a 12-step recovery, and he just kept stepping. I mean, he first went in, and he had he went in, and he started people he noticed were dying of the opioids. And there were friends and people just all around. And so he realized that the Narcan needed to be given. And so he started doing it. He just actually started doing it. And it wasn't totally well received by the people who didn't really understand this. But then he went further and wrote into the laws to break down the barriers so this could save people's lives. He then stepped in and said, okay, we've got people that are staying alive now. Let's do some things with housing and recovery supportive housing, where he had 5 houses, 3 for guys and 3 for women, or 2 for women. And then he got into going in a third thing where hitting addiction head on into the recovery, but not only the 30-day recovery, but actually doing outpatient recovery and following up. And then there was a fourth part of this that I think is really cool. He's got a coffee truck, and the Cookie Hustle. And this is helping people who are in recovery and teaching them how to bake, baristas, so that they can move on and move to like a Starbucks or whatever. But it's employment. I'm very excited. And Robert and I have been talking here a little bit before we got on, but Robert, welcome in, man.
Thank you.
And I love your story because you were humbled by your experience, but you didn't lose the drive. You know, like we were talking, you can when you go through going into being humbled and having to go to prison and having to come out and basically start your life over and figure out how you're going to do that, that can scare a lot of people into paralysis. And you did just the opposite of that. So I just, you know, it's fantastic. And you're affecting real change. I mean, everything that you've done is doing really good things for things that really need to be done, which I think is cool. Very cool. Yeah. So
I'm blessed.
You are.
I am.
Yes. And we were just talking, you've got three grown boys. So, you know, you've made it all the way through, and a good dad and all this stuff. Let's go back a little bit. So you're in St. Louis, but you kind of happened here. You grew up
I grew up in Southern California, Orange County.
Yeah. And what was life like for you back in the day?
You know, my dad went to prison when I was 2.5, and he was a heroin user. And my mom is the polar opposite of that. You know, she struggled with her own mental health issues in her 20s through relationships and stuff. But she was in real estate. And she was a mortgage banker. And but, you know, back then in the 70s, she wasn't. She was she was a waitress. Mm-hmm. She was a secretary at a real estate office. And we were poor. You know, she had two small kids, myself and my younger sister. And we moved a lot. I always tell people this. We moved a lot around Orange County. And part of it was the guy that owned the real estate office would allow my mom and us, excuse me, to move into the houses that were for sale. And the problem with that, which was cool to help us
Sure.
out, but the problem is they would sell.
Yeah, and then you had to move again.
And then we had to move.
Did that mean you had to change schools and all that?
4 times in one school semester.
Yeah, man, I think that'd be so tough.
Yeah, it was, but you're a kid and you adapt.
You do. Pretty resilient.
And my thing was, if we lived by the beach, I was surfing.
Sure.
If we lived, over here, I was skateboarding or dirt biking. But my thing was always, and I always tell this story, when I would get to a new school, because it became so common of a thing growing up, that I would, if I did something stupid, I would make the kids laugh, and then they would like me. And that's what I wanted.
That was how you could.
That's how I fit in.
Yeah.
And so part of the problem with that is that, you get in trouble.
Yeah.
Because I was, you have to escalate it. It starts off, you're gonna jump your bike.
Do something funny.
Yeah, and then you're spray painting the side of the school and getting in trouble. But then, you know what I mean? But consequences, you do that enough, you condition yourself. The consequences were just part of the process to get the kids to like you. So they're becoming less and less, having an effect on my changing my behaviors. They were just part of the process. And that's how it grew up. And
what was your thoughts at 2.5 years old, your dad going to prison? Was there any connection with him at all? I mean, was he just completely absent from your life?
No, so he was gone. I mean, my grandparents, the Rileys, they would take me to visit him up in Soledad State Prison when he was in California Department of Corrections. He ended up in the feds as well. And
what was that like as a kid?
I remember it just being kind of weird. And, this is the 70s, and so it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. Now it's kind of a badge of honor for a lot of people, or a way, just generationally. Yeah. Back then, my mom and I talked about this. I mean, at one point in my teens, I said, no, my dad was killed in Vietnam. Yeah. It was easier for me to say that than for me to say he was in the penitentiary. But it was, it was scary, and I didn't know this guy, and he came out, and he had hair down to his butt, and tattoos, and but it was just different, and it was also all I knew was not.
Well, I guess that's true. You wouldn't have known anything, and that's how you always saw him.
Yeah, that's how I always saw him, and I'm going to do a TED Talk about my dad here soon.
Are you?
I really am. I have a friend helping me write it, and because it's an interesting thing that how I viewed him. My dad is in active addiction right now at 75 years old, homeless somewhere out towards Vegas, and he's been out. He got out a year before me.
Okay.
And because I'm in recovery, one of the last times I saw him, I went down to Arkansas where he made his way, and he was homeless, and I saw him passing a window at a Burger King.
Wow.
And took him to buy him shoes and clothes, and then I took him to a 12-step meeting. And so I had this.
What was that like?
I had this connection I knew that he was suffering in the ways that I had suffered.
But did you feel between the two of you a connection at that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I understood, he didn't know any other way either.
Right.
He had grown up in the penitentiary.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. That's
deep.
Yeah.
That's deep stuff. So, moving around like that is your dad's in prison, your mom's working as hard as she can work. Your high school years, were they what you would call normal, or were things kind of out of whack?
No, I at 14, I tried alcohol for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously tried it, other than my cousin or somebody. Here, taste this at 9,
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I drank whiskey, and my story is within a week's time from there, I'd smoked some weed, I'd done some cocaine, and then I was going with some older kids to Compton, California to go buy some PCP.
So it really escalated.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, my thing is, I'm a polysubstance user, which means that, I'll drink until everybody's like, you're an alcoholic, stop drinking. Okay, I'll stop drinking.
Uh-huh.
I'll just smoke weed.
Yeah.
And then I'll smoke weed until you're sleeping on our couch and eating all of our food. You know, you got to stop smoking weed.
That guy.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, but I always, it was always something to escape or to deal with life.
Yeah.
And so it started in my teens, because at that point, 14, my mom had really had her first opportunity. So she had her business now. And so things started going like this for her. Meanwhile, I was left to live with my grandfather and my uncle in Garden Grove.
And you were just doing your own thing.
You know, and she's moving up to Anaheim Hills, you know.
So did you start getting in trouble?
Started getting arrested at 14, 15, you know.
What were you? What did you think when that started happening, Robert? Was that like, oh no, or
You know, it's funny, back to my dad, everybody always said, your dad was such a smart guy, like drugs really messed him up. You know, don't be like your dad. Everybody's saying that, right?
Yeah.
And I was exactly doing
what he had been doing.
Like I was skateboarding down the same streets he had skateboarded down. You know what I mean? And so I started getting in trouble. But, you know, back then they'd pick you up and they'd take you to the jail. They'd call your mom. My mom, single mom, she'd show up crying, screaming at me, you're going to end up like your dad, please don't, begging me, things like that. And
did you think that?
No, man,
you didn't think that you were going to end up like your dad?
I was just trying to.
The reason I asked that is because you and I were talking about, Robert, both our dads went to prison. And then you've got, you know, they say, well, if your dad goes to prison, I don't know what the percentage chances are that then you go to prison, but they're really high. And I never even thought of it like that because, you know, my dad went to prison. You know, he got in trouble with a bank deal and he came out and he kind of remade himself. But I know when I was there, I was 15 years old and we drove in there and, you know, he came out to visit us in the visiting room. And I know that my overall thought the whole time was that this would never happen to me. And, you know, when we would drive away, it's never going to happen to me. And the fact that my whole life went full circle and I ended up in prison. And then I went back because his sentence was longer than mine to visit him at the prison I had visited him at when I was 15 years old after I'd been in prison. That was a mind buzz. But yeah, it's weird to fall into these statistics because you don't feel like you're the statistic. And then you look at it and think, wow, I am actually. My dad went to prison and I went to prison and we both went to prison. It was just, you know, and I said I'd never go to prison.
Yeah. If you go to BOP.gov, and I'm not proud of this, but it's Robert David Riley and then Robert David Riley II. My name is directly below
right underneath him.
Directly below his.
Yeah.
And no, you remind me though, now I'm thinking, like, I remember thinking that'll never happen to me.
Yeah.
I'm smarter than that.
I'm just smart and never happened.
And this is what all my friends are doing too.
Yeah.
You know, they're all running around drinking. And being
Did you feel like though at that time that you had the ability to be addicted, or did you just think you were having fun?
Yeah, addiction wasn't a word in my, it was in the lower middle class, lower, you know, poverty. It was in the area that I was living. So it was a thing. That's just what it was.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't called an addiction. It was, you know.
It was just life.
It was life.
Yeah.
It was life. And so, no, I never had that thought of addiction.
So you get through your teenage years.
Married my childhood sweetheart.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. So then what happened?
So I married my childhood sweetheart,
yeah.
Somebody that she was, you know, 14, I was 15.
Yeah.
We get married later on, and we moved. Actually, we were married a year, and I had an opportunity to move to Colorado with my aunt and uncle's company. He was relocating it from Southern California, and so we moved out there. And I pretty much took drugs. And my son.
Would you been in like your early 20s?
Yeah, I was 20. Yeah, I got married when I was 20.
Okay.
So my son was born when I was 21, and he was almost a year old when we moved to Colorado. And I'd taken the drugs out of it for the most part. I'd smoke weed here and there or something like that. But alcohol, again, you got to have something to deal with life.
Yeah.
And so we moved to Colorado, and, that's really, I made it about 2.5 years, and my alcoholism, like serious alcoholism at this point, where I'm choosing alcohol over
everything
diapers
else,
or you know what I mean, over everything else. And she said, "That's it." And she kicks me out, and it was a green light for me.
Yeah,
it was a green light for me to live how and I had taken on all. Looking back now, I'm 52 years old. I can look back and just say, "Gosh, I was so immature."
Yeah.
In so many
you saw it as a green light to do exactly what I want to do now.
Yeah, like nothing holding me back now, you know. And by the way, I'm gonna be this great dad every other weekend.
Yeah,
and that's just not what happened.
No,
that is just not what happened. What I did was, I got my weekend to drink, and then when it was my weekend, I wouldn't drink. I would drink, and then it just became I didn't see my kids,
and that just became your world.
And that was it. And fast forward to where I'm now. I've been going in and out of incarceration in Colorado, mostly for bar fights. And
that's what I was going to ask. Like, is that how it happened? Just kind of just get life out of control type things?
Yeah. And
state charges.
My mom comes up from Texas because she had relocated out there, and where all of her family's from originally. And she comes up, and I was sitting in jail, and she came and visited me, and she said, "Look, you have like 6 months left on probation. The judge says he'll let you out now, but you have to leave the state."
Leave the state.
Stay out of Colorado.
We want you out of here.
Literally. This is what she's telling me.
That's what they have like on the movies. We'll drive you to the county line.
It was no joke. And so I get out, and part of it was you're going to come down here and you're going to get sober. Not sobriety. You're just not going to, you're going to stop drinking, And so we get down to Texas, and I love telling this because it's truth. We get down there, and one of the first people that I'm meeting, all this Texas cousins and stuff. One of the first people I meet, a cousin almost my age. And I'll give you 2 guesses what his first name is. Legal first name.
Robert?
Budweiser. I have a cousin who I love. His first legal name is Budweiser.
Okay.
His sister's name is Brandy, by the way.
That's not Budweiser and Brandy. I love it.
So now
you can't make that up.
You can't make it up. So we get to Texas, and you're supposed to straighten up your life.
Yeah.
You're going to be a dad. You're going to get back together. Here's your cousin Budweiser.
Unbelievable.
True story.
Budweiser and Brandy. So because you had these state charges and you're kind of living through that. When does it get real bad? When does your nightmare get to the point where you're looking at something that's different than what you had before?
So I'll fast forward through a bunch. I'm in Texas Department of Corrections with a prison sentence, and I'm about a year into it, and I get called up to the R&O. Well, I get told to roll up my stuff, come up to R&O.
Okay.
I honestly, I thought I was making parole.
Yeah, you thought you were getting out.
And I was going to have to either go clear up a warrant, a little ticket somewhere, you know how it is. And I get up there, and I'm sitting up there in the cage. This is in Brownwood, Texas, TDCJ. And I'm sitting there, and boss man, where am I going? And he goes, "The U.S. Marshals are here for you."
Oh, man. That's never a good start. That is not that's not what you thought you were walking into.
No, and I knew that the feds were just handing out time like it was candy, And I literally I fell back onto the seat, and so then I get transferred over. I'm in Fort Worth. I'm in the Fort Worth federal courthouse, and they hand me my indictment papers, and so you see this piece of paper, and what it says on the front of it is the United States of America
versus
Robert Riley.
It's very intimidating.
And I'm like, man, they got aircraft carriers.
That's right.
I don't even have a skateboard right now.
Robert, I'm not even sure if there's anything in this world that's more intimidating than that.
It seriously is, and so. I get transferred over. I'm awaiting, and everybody's lawyers, their public defenders are coming to visit them, and I never get mine never shows up. In fact, I go to court once, and they never show up, and the judge asks what's going on.
Oh my gosh!
And so, So I write this letter to this, and it's her first case. You know the deal. They a lot of them, they have to do so many pro bonos, and they want to get that plaque on their wall in their office. And she had an MBA, and so I wrote her this letter, and I literally told her, I need you to shit or get off the pot.
In the letter.
That's what I told her.
Okay.
Like, either do something or let me. This is my life.
Yes.
And so she goes and she gets my, supersedes my indictment, and really became a bulldog. And so I end up, the judge saw where there was double jeopardy happening with my state charges that I had already been picked up on and this new federal case.
Mm-hmm.
And so she runs back some of my time. I end up getting 30 months I have to go do now in the feds.
Okay.
But my state time is still running too. So so I end up in Forest City Medium, down in Forest City, Arkansas. And
but a medium.
I was at it because of all my conviction,
Right, the state,
all the way to the right, all the way down,
all the stuff that followed
your PSI.
Yes, and that's a points system. So I've completely blocked that out. Okay, got it.
So I end up over at the medium, and
what was your take on walking into a federal prison?
Well,
medium?
I had already been in Texas Department of Corrections,
Yeah?
where you can't. I mean, it's only been like 5 or 6 years since they put phones in that system. You used to have to go get what they called a chaplain's call, one every 90 days, and you're waiting in a line behind 300 guys that got out there before you.
Wow.
So you had to write your family or them come visit, And so now I'm in a federal, and for real, from Texas, it was a huge step up. Mm-hmm. It's just you got to do more time there.
Exactly.
And they have no parole system. So, I mean, I had been in jails and incarcerated in prison. I've been doing it so long off and on that
you knew how to do time.
I knew how to integrate into that society. And it,
isn't that strange though? Because I was having this conversation with somebody, Robert, and it is odd that one thing you don't fear, you never want to go back.
No,
you never want to go back. But the fear of knowing that you can do it, that you can do it now. And that is a strange dichotomy of your thought process, because when I first went to prison, I was wondering what in the world's going to happen to me on the other side. Now I know. I just don't want to go back.
Right. Yeah. No,
you knew how to do time.
Like I said to you earlier, I know how to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do the free world life out here, sober, not having the escape tools. Yeah. Right. Like, that's what scared me.
But I'm interested though, when you go into, because it was 30 months. Did you feel immediately like that you were going to withdraw, or that you felt like you were going to have withdrawals, or how did your body feel when you went into that? Because you were already in the Texas system.
I'd already been in TDC.
So you were already through that.
Yeah, I had already done that. I'd done
sober.
Yeah, I was sober.
Yeah.
I mean, we still drank, and at that point, I hadn't decided to be sober.
Yeah, no, you can get what you want in prison. It's just deciding if you don't do it.
Right. So that part was fine. And when I moved over into the feds, it was better care. It was a lot better everything than Texas Department of Corrections. The violence, the waking up on Christmas morning in a cell was still there. Mm-hmm. That just resonates with me. Yeah. Not having carpet to go in the day room and lay down and watch a football game.
Yeah.
Like, carpet was one of the things I missed. I know it sounds crazy, but it was like just being able to lay down in your living room, right?
You don't have soft things in prison. Everything's a hard surface. Yep. You got a plastic chair. The only thing that you have really that's any cushion at all is that little mattress they give you to sleep on. But other than that, everything's a hard surface.
That's why I went to work as a grade 1 clerk in laundry, because that was where my hustle was at.
There you go.
I could make my own pillows.
Exactly. Pillows are huge.
Yeah.
We used to watch the pillow guy, My Pillow, on TV, and just think, man, that'd be so good. And now I got out, and that pillow's not that great.
No. You should see my bed today. Yeah. I have 15 pillows on my bed.
It's the little things in life, right, Robert?
Things, yeah. It really is. So I'm, and I always tell people, here's what happened. There's 3 things that happened in late August of 2006. I had a little cousin who I'm 14 years older than he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the kid that kind of got passed around by all the aunts because his mom was in addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And she and I are more like brother and sister than her being my aunt.
Sure.
It's only 2 years different.
Yeah.
It's my mom's little sister. So he idolized me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he thought a lot of me because I was the older gangster cousin,
cool guy.
right? Yeah. And so he got killed that year.
Mm.
And
Wow.
he robbed I won't go into what he did. He put himself in a bad position, and a guy killed him. And the murder's never been solved, by the way.
Mm.
And
How old was he?
21 years old.
Oof. Okay.
And so I get that, and a couple days later, I get a letter from my middle child, Aaron, and he's like 10, 11 at the time. And this is where I'll get emotional, but and it starts off, "Dear Robert, you know, stop saying you're mine and Tyler's dad. Dads are there for hockey games and birthdays and holidays, and you've never been there for any of that stuff." And so, you know, I get both of those things, and then I'm walking the track with this old school guy, and really nice guy. His name was Jackson, and I'm telling him about my father being in prison my whole life, and I'm telling him how I'm realizing I'm repeating the exact same steps because now I'm hearing from my boys.
Yeah.
What I had thought.
And you don't want to hear that.
What I had thought about my dad.
Exactly.
You know. And of course, and then my little cousin who just, you know, and so I'm walking the track with him. I'm telling him all this, and he says, "I want you to come out here tomorrow, youngster." So I come out the next day to the rec, and he hands me a piece of paper, and it's his time computation sheet.
Yeah.
You know that sheet?
Yeah.
And next to his out date, it says deceased.
Mm.
And I kid you not, he looks me straight in the eyes and he says, "If you don't change everything right now, this is what you're going to end up with. You come back with one of these. You know, you're already on that path. And not only are you going to do the same as your dad, you're going to exceed him because you're not your dad," right? Quotation mark.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, it hit me.
That's deep.
I believed him.
Yeah.
Like he looked me in the eyes and I believed him. And, you know, I went back to the unit, and you know, there was some violence on the unit that day. Whenever that happened, our warden Outlaw, his real name, by the way.
It's like Budweiser.
Yeah,
and Brandy.
You can look him
and
up.
Outlaw.
Yeah, Warden Outlaw. He was a straight up guy. But anyways, he locked us down, and you know, I didn't have any spiritual religion. Like, that wasn't a thing in my family, you know, and unless you're, you know, on your way to jail or didn't have money for rent, or, you know. And, man, I just, what should I do? I got to do something different. And I always say that I didn't choose to get sober because I wanted to be sober and because it made sense, because you guys told me it made sense. I chose to get sober because I knew it was the only opportunity for me to get to be a dad.
Wow.
That's why I got, and that's the truth.
And you know, the other thing about that is, Robert, there is nothing as bad news in prison. It's like your world shrinks and you feel like you know, are trapped, and you really are trapped, but it feels even that much tighter when you get bad news like that. And you contemplating all that and making that decision and taking a different path at that point had to feel, I don't know, liberating, or what? What did you feel? Because you knew what you wanted. You knew you wanted to be a dad, and you were going to do whatever it took to make that world happen. What did your whole mindset change about how you were going forward?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say this. I would say that, you know, my path to being a dad was very, very narrow at that point. Like, the kids had already said no more.
Yeah.
Like,
that was their letter.
That took almost 20 months for me to get one of them to answer my letters.
Yeah.
And after that, because I respected, and then I did it under the guidance of a sponsor,
Yeah.
how I communicated and reached out. But, no, I mean, I certainly had this is my last ditch effort attitude, and even, fast forward to getting out of prison. When you talk about bad news, by the way, I had besides my uncle, my grandfather was really my dad figure, my mom's dad.
Yeah.
I called him Daddy Ray, and he passed away on Christmas Eve of 2007. So
when you were in prison?
Roughly 6 months before I got out. And, I used it as a drive for me to continue what I had gotten to that point, which was, over a year sober, of not using anything behind the fence, and also, more importantly, trying to live
a different type of style.
Those principles, of staying out of the BS and focusing on what really mattered, which was getting to go home and try to be a dad to these boys, and trying to break the cycle like you and I were talking about. Because, when your dad went to prison, you became 3 times more likely to go. And when you went to prison, your girls became 3 times more likely, and the same, and so to try to break that. And so, fast forward to me getting out, I don't know that I really had it in my mind that I was out and going to stay sober, per se.
I
knew I wasn't going to use, because they were testing me 6 times a month, calling my color. And,
right.
I
know that. Yeah, it's that random thing.
Yeah,
and, today's your day.
Yeah, and so it wasn't. But, I knew that if
Did you feel different though when you're getting released this time from federal prison? Did it feel different than the other times that you were walking out? Or can you
maybe?
Or did you even think about it that way?
Maybe because I had a little bit of, again, I knew I wasn't walking into the rearview mirror of what I'd always walked into.
Yeah.
I was walking into a big old runway out in front of me.
Unknown.
There was a huge runway.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the one in Oklahoma City.
Right. The old diesel therapy, yeah.
I mean, it was so I was, I just kept accepting the challenges that came with it. And you and I talked about some of those challenges earlier, getting out and having these, kids that are now, almost adults or certainly about to enter there and still paying child support and having 50% of your gross and then 25% of your gross to the halfway house.
Yeah.
Pay the taxes on all of it. And
on the gross.
Yeah. And so, but I saw all those things as challenges, not barriers, and,
which is a different mindset, because it's so easy to, I always say there's a difference between being a victim and being a survivor. A victim has the blame and points the fingers and kind of goes and sits in a corner and feels and blames everybody around them. Surviving gives you strength, and whatever that is, that mindset is a different feel. And what you're saying, Robert, is you said, okay, I know I've got things I don't know, but I'm going to step into them, and whatever that is, it might not even feel fair, but regardless, I'm going to step.
Perception. I told my mom a great one. I just heard this. It's not my original. You put 2 kids into a room and you put some horse crap in the middle of the room, right? You go in, you ask the older kid, well, what do you think? He says, it smells like there's a bunch of horse crap in here. You turn to the little kid and you say, what do you think? He says, yeah, it smells like horse crap, but I know there's a pony around here somewhere.
That's true optimism.
Like that is, and so, I knew that I was still on federal supervision. I still had 3 years of parole left with the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And then I still had a third. So Missouri was doing the courtesy supervision for Texas.
Yeah.
So I was actually issued a Missouri Department of Corrections number, and I've never done a day of time here.
That's crazy.
But I had 3 parole. Now, the 2 state agencies said, we're not even, you just send us your reports. Yeah. We know if you mess up.
We're not interested.
The feds are going to get you, and we don't even have to worry about you,
Yeah.
And so, going to college, like, it was just I I got me a little girlfriend eventually, and she was in recovery, and she was in college to be a social worker, and she started writing papers about me, like her reports. She would do them on me, right? Like me.
You were the test guinea pig. Yeah.
And so I would want to read what she was writing about.
Sure.
Me. But it sparked these conversations, and then she's like, "Hey, there's this scholarship for people in recovery to go to. It's called the Next Step, and why don't you apply?" And I'm like, I'm a 40-year-old. I called myself an ex-con back then. I don't do that anymore because I've done so much more than that.
Right.
Today. And they're not gonna. And I remember showing up to the interview, and I kid you not, I had a bald head at the time. So you see my tattoos.
Yeah, no, you got a good amount of great tattoos.
And I had my the old California button all the way up, and I looked at the panel and I said, I don't want to waste your money and my time. I'm gonna take one class and see how I do.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent me money for the whole school year, and that kind of even pissed me off too. I'm like,
they didn't listen to me.
I told them one class, right? And so I took the one class and I got an A. And it just sparked.
That was it.
And another challenge.
Yep.
Right? How far can I take this?
Mm-hmm.
Can I really go, And so I've just been challenged by that, and I don't know where we're at in what you want to ask, but even when we're talking about, my last 2 years and my relapse that I had a year and a half ago, or a little better than that, it wasn't that I was challenging myself this time. I knew what I needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that I needed to challenge myself to, how can I come back? No, I can do it if I just apply these principles to my life.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency, sobriety, and if I apply those things, I know the results.
Yeah.
Because now I have that runways,
yeah.
In front of me, but I have a rear view of some pretty good track record too.
Well, and I think, I was reading the story on one of the stories that was online, Robert, about you, and there were some things that happened because you were taking steps forward, being responsible and not being in that institutionalized mindset. You ran across some people that were good people, Mike, that was it your first job that you got?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My plant manager. Yeah.
Yeah. And you didn't get the best job there. You got a job. You just happened to work. You worked and took the overtime. You did all that stuff and worked your way up, but he took a chance on you. And I think that's such a, if Mike's out there listening, that's what so many of us are looking for, is that chance, that opportunity. Just let me try. Let me show you.
Let me tell you, and you talk about some of the challenges that formerly incarcerated individuals. So when I did a program in the Dismas House before I ever started looking for a job called Connections to Success. They're still around Missouri some, but I did the programming. So when I went to interview for that job, I literally had a case manager sitting next to me during the interview, 2 chairs like this.
Wow.
Right? Like this. Now, a month after getting the job, my federal probation, and this isn't anything about probation. I mean, I don't know what their reasoning behind, but I'm going to just tell my story. Mm-hmm. Mike calls me in one day and he says, "What's the deal with your probation officer?" I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "He just came up here. He wanted to ask me this, and this about you, but he pretty much made it like, I don't know if you want to have this guy working for you or not." He goes, and I told him, I really don't care about his tattoos as long as it doesn't slow him down from running my machine out there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and so, like guys like Mike and ladies like Cindy that we were talking about. When I got my first apartment, that she, after spending $200 that I didn't have.
On application fees that they just turn you down.
For them to shoot me down because of my record.
Yeah.
And
then on that one, you just shot straight with her, Robert. You just said, "Hey, I don't have any more money on the application. Here's my thing. Here's who I am."
I said, I don't want to, again, back to I don't want to waste your time.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't have any money to waste.
Yeah.
But here's who I am. But here, more importantly, here's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, as long as it all matches up. And she took a shot. And you know what? She still talks to me today. And
well, you really remember those people too that reach out and give you a hand up, because that's what you're desperately needing. When somebody does, they're like, "Wow, thank you."
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. My buddy Richard, that, to be able, because I had the 50% gross still,
Yeah.
even after I got out of the halfway house for my child support. My buddy Richard that gave me a job at the apartment condominium complex as a, to make some extra money. Now, again, it's just as important for me to say, yes, I had these opportunities given by some very special people.
Mm-hmm.
More importantly, though, I had to accept the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And then I had to put in the work.
Yeah. You had to be the guy.
Yeah. And so and I tell guys that all the time that, there's.
Don't give us a bad name.
Right. Like it's like.
Because there's something to
do.
Yeah.
My favorite story is this, guys will wash all their clothes, all their whites in the toilet when we're locked up.
Yeah.
But we're too good to go flip burgers.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, wait a minute.
Let's don't forget about where we're all at.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
so true. So getting into, because I want to walk through some of the steps that you took on, Robert, because at a certain point you said that as you're getting your life together, feeling probably pretty good about yourself, that you're taking on these steps, that you're taking on more responsibility at your jobs and getting at some other jobs, and you got to find a place to live. But then you run across a situation where you've got all of a sudden people that are dying around you. Can you expand on that whole thing that went down?
Yeah, this is 2011, 12, right in there, and I'm going to a lot of meetings.
You've been out about 3 years, maybe.
Yeah, and by the way, it's very important for me to say that that kid that wrote me the letter, Aaron Riley.
Yeah.
When he was 15, by then or somewhere in there, and was skateboarding down the same streets myself and my father had, and was getting kicked out of high school, and had a stealing beer case. He came to live with me.
Wow.
In that 1-bedroom apartment that Cindy rented me. And 1 week he got the bedroom and the bed, and I had the couch, and we flip-flopped every week.
I love it. I love it.
And more importantly,
was it hard to get him to be with you, or how did that?
He was out of like. Well, let me say,
hey, I'm here in St. Louis, signing this 1-bedroom apartment.
No, he was getting into a lot of trouble, experiencing a lot of the same stuff, and experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and so I had to let him surf couches for about 8 months
until he.
And he would call me up and try to hustle me because his 49th bicycle had been stolen.
Sure.
His story, not mine.
Right.
And I'd always tell him I'm not the guy to hustle.
Right.
I always told him this. I said, I love you. Stay in touch with me.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're ready to do something different, you let me know, Aaron Riley, and I got you. And it took about 9 months of him surfing couches, and I'll never forget him bawling, crying. And he called me up and said, Dad, I'm ready. And I had him a plane ticket. Because
That's so cool, though. But it's cool on both sides, because he had to make a step himself to know that he didn't want to go any further the way he was going. And he believed in you, in what you were trying to do with your life, and wanted to be with you. I think that's incredibly great.
So he flew out here. I got him into a school program, he graduated high school out here. And then he wanted to go back to California, and he went, and then he moved back, and then he moved.
Yeah.
And now he's back to help me with the coffee business, to run that for me. But no, so that time, our friends, I was going to meetings, and our friends, people just started dropping left and right. Like it just every.
Well, the reason why this is interesting is that you hear about this in the news, but you were seeing it and feeling it in real time around you.
Yeah. So we reached out to a guy from Chicago Recovery Alliance up in Chicago that my friend Chad knew, and got some Narcan from him, and we started handing it out to people. Just stay safe, people that we knew that were using, and there was a lot of critics here and there, but then there was a lot of like really vehement, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Are you out of your mind? And I always tell people, like, no, we're just trying to keep them safe.
Yeah.
Like
breathing until the next day.
Yeah. Like I don't plan on driving my car into a tree, but I still put my seatbelt on.
Right.
Right.
Like, that's a good analogy.
Like that's the truth. And so we were doing that, and the news picked it up, and they ran a piece on us, and that really just sent people out. But then it also brought a lot of moms out that had wished that they had Narcan when they found their kid experiencing an accidental overdose in the basement.
Right.
And that was, it didn't matter what the critics said at that point. And like I tell the story, you know, we were just naive enough to think that we could do something. And I'll never forget sitting in that one-bedroom apartment, you know, tattoos from my neck to my ankles, and I'm emailing and researching state legislators of who could possibly run a bill for us to. At that time, it was honestly, they were doing a lot of stories in the news about body dumps going on. And what a body dump is you and I are getting high in a hotel and you start experiencing an overdose. And so I don't want to get busted. So I grab the dope and I run. I just leave you there to die when a shot of Narcan could save your life. And so, but they were like pushing people out of cars in front of hospitals and in alleys and all these things. And so the first bill that we researched and put together and submitted and got somebody ran for us was actually the 9/11 Good Samaritan bill, which was the last bill that we got passed. We got the removing the barriers for like first responders wouldn't carry Narcan. There's a lot of them that refused to do it because of liabilities. And so that was the first bill, and then the follow up to that was allowing people, was removing the barrier to being able to get it, because you have to go get a prescription, take it to the pharmacy. So we got the third-party access.
So you just basically removed all the barriers.
That's
legally, through new laws, remove the barriers.
We were just trying to do smart it's not because we were these great forward thinkers. We were doing what other states had done, other states around had done. And more importantly, we were just trying to be like really common sense about it.
Sure.
Like, okay, so you don't want them robbing houses or whatever, you know, all these horrible stories, stealing from grandma, then we need to keep them alive so we can get them into recovery, get them into treatment. Unless you just want all of them to die.
Right.
You know. And we
had
a state senator that actually said that, and it was picked up by the New York Post and ran. He said, who cares if they die? It just cleans up the gene pool.
Wow. That's a
some of the stuff we've been up against
statement.
In the state. Yeah, it's been crazy.
Did that, Robert, is that what really spurred and gave you the confidence to start sprinting into all these other things that you did? Or what? I mean, because I guess you affected real change on that, and then you just jumped. And I think your next thing was it the recovery center or was it the housing?
No, so we started handing out Narcan, naloxone, and then a bunch of moms were like, we need to start a 501c3 so we can do like donations so you guys can buy more Narcan and supply it out. And then that started the Mo Network. So we started Mo Network, and from Mo Network after that was
what did Mo Network do?
So we advocated for all those passages. You know, it's funny, and I have to say this, that the other agencies that would talk crap on us, like they called us rebels. So we started an agency in Florida called
Rebels.
Rebel Recovery.
Rebel Recovery. I love it.
It's a great agency.
I think there's a picture or something online that has kind of a cool T-shirt. Rebel Recovery.
But and now today they're going and getting funding for Narcan distribution, which that's what we want, right? That's what we want.
Full circle.
But so we wanted a place where somebody could come and get some resources. Like at that time, there was a 5-month waiting list to get a state-funded bed. So you would call. So somebody, you know, the window for somebody to want to go or be willing to go to treatment is like what?
They could be dead by the time
6.5 minutes or until the dope man calls me back.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so to 5 months. And so we started just, hey, we've got this guy. Can you please let him in? The list was all made up anyways because it was people that had gone back out into addiction anyway. So we started being able to get people in and making these connections around the treatment community. And then we started doing things that kind of pissed people off. Like there weren't any detoxes, so we would go sign them in as, you know, because they were harmed to themselves. And then that would give them like 3 or 4 or 5 days of detoxing in the hospital, in the psych ward, you know.
With their own rules of how it was set up, that worked that way.
But that was the best resource we had at the time, you know. And so we became the resource center for kind of making these connections. And to us, the next really smart thing to do was, you know, okay, so we can get them into treatment, right? We can get them first we can keep them alive, give them some Narcan. Then we can get them into treatment because now we have these connections. What do they do when they get out of treatment and they're still...
Where are they going to live?
Where are they going to live? So then we started the sober living.
Which is huge, because somebody who's gotten clean and then is back on the streets and they don't have anywhere to live, there's a real good chance that's not going to work out well.
And then we started doing things like, you know, we saw the numbers of people that were getting released from incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
Their overdose numbers were they were so much more likely because they went to prison using this much or went to jail using this much. And then they get out, they try to do the same amount. And we're not even talking about
And that's what you'd see that the Dismas house maybe once or twice, you know.
I had one while I was there.
Yeah, it would just, there's a guy that overdosed, so, you know,
no showers.
third floor.
Yep,
So,
yep.
Yeah.
And so, you know, then we got to do things like we got it where we started, if somebody's identified as an opioid use disorder, now they put Narcan in their kit, in their bag when they leave, you know. And to us, those were just the smart things to do,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, hey, we could blame them and call them junkies and, you know, rejects all we want, but how about we just try to keep them alive?
One of the smart things that you guys did, though, was that the other housing facilities were kicking people out because they'd fallen back into bad use, and you guys you figured out a way not to have that happen, where they don't get kicked out of your own facilities. You just made the other people safe so that they could all stay and try to survive in that housing unit.
Yeah, somebody tested positive before we started ours. Somebody tested positive for whatever, weed, cocaine, whatever. They would immediately be ejected, right? They'd be kicked out. And I just thought that was the craziest thing. Why would you kick somebody out when that's like somebody showing up to the hospital and you being like, we're closed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, wait, that's when they need you the most.
Right, when they've fallen.
And so I said, you know, I remember saying, did you talk to them and find out what happened?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And are they willing to do something different? Like there's accountability that you have to hold them to as well.
Right.
But let's start with just giving them a safe space to even say that to you.
But the cool thing about that is, Robert, you were speaking from experience. I mean, that's the thing that I think, you know, you weren't wanting to throw these people out because you know what that's like, and you also knew that what they would experience if that would happen. So each time you were taking these steps, you were living in your own footworks and steps of what you had lived. And I think that's what's so effective about what's going on with what you're doing, because your next step is to deal with addiction head on. And, you know, you co-founded, was it Sauna Lake?
Yep, Sauna Lake Recovery
and
Center.
That was such a huge step. I mean, were you thinking at the time, this is the natural thing I should be doing? This is the natural, because as I write it down here on my yellow pad, it looks like it just went 1, 2, 3, 4.
I wish it was that easy.
I know it wasn't.
Yeah, but
it's like every time that you got success in something, you expanded it.
There was an opportunity.
Yes,
there was an opportunity. And I wanted to seize the opportunity. The treatment side of things really for me was most treatment centers focused on one modality of treating somebody. This is we're going to send you to AA here.
Yeah.
Or over here it's Christian based, or over here it's just abstinence complete and total. Mm-hmm. And so nobody was really doing like, hey, wait a minute, there's a lot of people here and we need to allow any path to recovery.
Yeah.
Like let's help each person find what is going to work
right.
for them, because
Your
what
way.
you do to lose weight is going to be different than what I do to lose weight or any. Mm-hmm. And so for me, when the opportunity for a treatment center, for me, it was more of all right, well, we can change treatment now.
Yeah.
Like we can bring like smart evidence-based, like let's follow the data and not our opinions.
Yeah.
Opinions get people killed.
Yes.
Let's start treating this from the data standpoint. And the data says, this gives them the best chance of survival. You know, medications, going back to the sober houses, you couldn't be on, here's the craziest story for you, okay, you ready? A judge says you have to go to treatment and then you have to go live in a sober house, okay? So you go to treatment and they would put you on a medication, let's say like methadone or Suboxone or something like that. So then you put you on the treatment and then you go to get into the sober house and they wouldn't let you in if you were on any of those medications.
Wow.
And so then they would relapse and then you have to go back in front of the judge.
All the way
and it was
back
just
again.
this whole cycle. Or how about this one? A judge would say, okay, you know, you're going to be on methadone for drug court for 18 months. By the way, at the end of 18 months, and we fought this one for years, towards the end of the 18 months, drug court, the people at drug court would say, before you graduate, you have to be off the medication. It's the only thing that was keeping them a barrier, right?
Yeah.
They would go off the medication, they would return to use and then fail out of the program,
Cycle
get
back.
sent to prison, have to come back out, start it all over, lose their kids.
Man.
So we fought that one for a long time, right? So treatment was like my opportunity to like, okay, well, let's follow some data now.
Yeah.
Let's do something that actually makes sense and is supported by evidence. And so it was an opportunity.
And it really grew. I mean,
it blew up.
It really grew.
Yeah.
I forget the numbers that you told me, but it wasn't that long, and you were treating a lot of people.
We were helping a lot of people and doing a lot. You know, I went to all the really smart people that were passionate, that were doing it for the right motives, which was to help people. And I put together,
because you were interested in outcomes. I mean, you said that before we got started. You know, the outcomes were more important than the income.
Yeah.
Which the income was good too. It was just that
it's important.
Yeah, because you got to make it.
It has to be sustainable.
Yes.
Right. So, so we brought together this really passionate, caring group of people at Sauna Lake that just did phenomenal work. You know, and so and you know, I was under a lot of stress, and I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And like I told you earlier, you know, put some prestige, money, power, and prestige.
All the good stuff that you wanted.
Yeah, I put everything, and I just wasn't prepared for it, and I did relapse. I went away to treatment, came back. A lot of things in my life changed.
I think it's so important, though, for someone like you.
Let me just say this.
With that honesty of that, because, you know, you have done so much, Robert. So, you know, you could write a book just off my notes here of what you've accomplished and how you've overcome. But you are just, you know, a person who is trying to make it and trying to, you know, improve things, but you're living your life. And it's the honesty, the raw honesty of that is things went really good and things kind of got out of control, but you caught it.
Well,
you could have gone into overdrive over the cliff.
I had plenty of money to go do what I wanted.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to make. So with all those things that I was doing, I kept, and whether it was intentional or not, I kept getting up this pedestal to where I was the recovery guy, you know, and
making speeches,
Mr. Recovery, and the truth is, man, I'm just a guy that took advantage of some opportunities that other people gave me, and I'm just a person in recovery. And I struggle today not to drink, just like the next guy, with whether he has 24 hours or he has 24 years.
Yeah,
and so when I was leaving Betty Ford, the day I was leaving Betty Ford, you're gonna love this part of the story. I was leaving Betty Ford, and I was at the airport in Palm Springs, and I decided to tell the truth, because I was the COO of this company.
Yeah,
and
you're
I
big
owned
deal.
sober houses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I wanted to take the wind out of anybody's sail that might want to, the haters. And so I told the truth and told exactly where I was at and what I was doing, and it was very, it blew up. It kind of went viral in a way of what I said, and I was just trying to honestly shoot straight, hold myself accountable.
Yeah.
Tell the truth to all my friends that had placed those kind of trusts in me and stuff, and then just get back to work.
To me, that just even makes you more believable and more the right guy for that position in life, because everybody falls down. That's the thing. There's a Chinese proverb that says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And there's a reason why you get up, because you have reasons, you have goals, you have things and plans that you want to get up for. Because if you don't, you stay down. So that's the one thing I think that is so inspiring about your story is that you've been knocked down several times, but you've gotten back up. And each time you've gotten back up, you're doing big things. And I think that's something that people can take away from this, is that whatever that is in your life, You know, when we talk about nightmare success, success is so many different things to so many people. I call it, you know, freeing yourself, whatever that is of your mind, freeing yourself. But you, then you come back. Then you come back and you have an opportunity again. You've got this coffee truck from some friends, and you take this opportunity. You already had the idea of the cookie hustle, which, by the way, my oldest daughter is a real cookie person that, anyway, that's a whole different story, but,
Send her our way. I love collaborating.
She's very good at it. She just kind of gave up on it. But then you saw this as an opportunity to create work opportunities for people in recovery, bakers, baristas, and wow. How cool is that? How cool is that?
I mean,
and how cool is it to have a coffee truck too?
How cool.
Everybody.
Let's keep it real. But
I mean, you just get 10% cooler to say, "Hey, I got a coffee truck." By the way,
you know, we keep talking about the opportunities that other guys, other men or gals have given me, and then you said something about freedom. And the truth is, I get more of my freedom by giving those opportunities to others.
Yes. Fills you up.
It's not just what I get to do.
No, it fills you up.
It's what I get to give.
Yeah.
You know, on to the next. I just had a guy of course I get to help so many people that I have tons of stories and texts and messages and stuff like that. And I just started sponsoring a guy that went to prison when he was 16. He just got out March 1st after 32 years. And, you know, he inspires me.
Yeah.
You know, the folks from my sober house they're going to come up there and be baristas. Like I kind of miss it.
Hey,
I kind of miss it. Like I miss that
the give and take.
That oh man, everything's in front of me, you know?
I get it, because I get the opportunity to sit here with these podcasts and get inspired by stories, because I was sharing some of the guys that I was talking to you about that have been on the podcast, and that does fill you up, makes you feel good.
So I have a question for you before, I don't know where we're at in the.
Oh, go at it, Robert.
I want you to come do this for my coffee shop at some point with some of our folks.
Yeah, for sure.
Or teach us how to do it, or teach them.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like you have, who is it that does the coffee in cars with comedians?
It's good.
Coffee at the coffee shop.
I think even Jerry Seinfeld
convicts
had that.
Or something.
I think Jerry Seinfeld had the coffee in cars with. It was on Netflix or whatever. Yeah, you probably should. That should be your next thing.
But I'm saying, like,
for sure. Well, I mean, where you're at now, you seem like this is you're in a good place. You know, your kids are good. You're kind of gotten into this cool vibe deal that you're in now with your business. After all this that you've gone through, Robert, and you've gone through, you know, a journey basically of, you know, this is a life story journey that you've been through, and you're at where you are now. Looking back at all of it, what do you think your biggest takeaway is from people listening to this, to how you've and what you feel about yourself and the life that you've gotten to here? What can somebody learn from what you've taken from all this?
You know, I think that I'll speak for myself, but I lacked a lot of confidence. And my mom and I were talking about this recently, because, you know, I was talking to a doctor, and she's like, "It sounds like you know more than him." I'm like, "You'd be surprised." And I said, you know, I wish I had the confidence. I wish I'd had the confidence to do some of the things, because as others around me have shown, like I heard yours earlier, and from what, you know, we could talk about, okay, it's different places and things like that, but whose mountain was higher? I don't know. I guess it's who's climbing.
True.
You know what I mean? Like, and I just think that for the folks listening out there, and particularly talking about formerly incarcerated individuals and the struggles and the challenges that we face, reach out to somebody that has a little bit more confidence in you, and trust me, man, like, you'll get your confidence.
I love that.
Just got to be willing to take a couple of steps, you know.
I love that because it's what you're really saying, Robert, is humbling yourself, looking for somebody that you want what they have, and be around them and get it and understand it and feel it. Yeah.
And just stay willing.
And I think the other thing too, Robert, that I've seen just talking to you, reading about you, every time you took a step and you give your, so there are a lot of, it wasn't easy to take those steps. Each time you took that step, I think that did give you more confidence because you were stepping into the unknown. You hadn't done it before. And, I think that working with the opioid thing, getting those barriers broken down, I think that gave you something where you could see the pathway that, hey, you know what? I'm pretty good at this. I could accomplish some stuff. And from there, man, you just kept going. And now where you are, it's a very cool story. Very proud of what you've accomplished because, 2008, you could have come out and gone right back in. That would have been the cycle that you broke with your story with your dad.
So glad I didn't go back. And more importantly, that I got to participate with my kids.
Oh, man.
So I didn't have to do any time with them. That would have broke my heart.
Oh, man, I can't imagine. And, it is the little things in life. We went on a family trip recently, and it's just your gratitude of being there. I'm just glad I'm here. I'm just glad to be a part of this. And everybody's here together, and it's good. It's the little things. It doesn't have to be huge. It's just glad I'm here.
Yep.
It's a good thing. Robert, man, thank you. You've been a great guest, and this incredible story. I love stories like this.
Can get a picture of us.
For those of you who are looking for a book out there, I wrote one, Nightmare Success. Check it out on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Love the likes and the reviews. If you want to go to my website, leave me a message. And really appreciate everybody staying in and giving me some referrals like Robert here. Like I used to say from my Leavenworth TrueLinks email, stay strong and I'll do the same. Nightmare Success, in and out. Thanks for being here today.